The wind above the Atacama Desert does not speak, it only erases. At an elevation of nearly 3,000 meters, the atmosphere is so thin and parched that it feels less like air, and more like a veil between the living world and the eternal vacuum. Here, the peaks of the Andes stand as jagged teeth biting into the velvet blackness of the southern sky. In late October of the year 2027, the silence of this high altitude is broken only by the rhythmic mechanical heartbeat of the Vera C. Rubin Observatory. It is a sentinel of glass and steel perched on the edge of the world, designed for a single, inexorable purpose: to watch. Inside the heart of this monolithic structure, the Simony Survey Telescope prepares for its nightly ritual. It does not look at the universe with the squinted eye of a curious amateur. It stares with a 3,200 megapixel gaze, a camera the size of a small car, capable of capturing the faintest whispers of light that have travelled for billions of years across the abyss. Each night it records 15 terabytes of data, a digital tapestry of every star, galaxy and drifting rock visible from this hemisphere. It is a machine built to map the history of the cosmos, yet on this specific night, it would find something that did not belong to the local neighbourhood of our Sun. The signal appeared first as a flicker on a high-resolution display in a climate-controlled room miles below the summit. To a casual observer, it would have been nothing more than a stray pixel, a momentary glitch in the vast sea of information. But to the algorithms designed to detect the subtle shifts of the heavens, it was a ghost. This was not the steady, predictable path of a common asteroid bound by the gravity of our solar system. This object was moving with a terrifying linear velocity that defied the circular logic of our planetary family. It was coming from the interstellar void, a place where the light of distant suns is stretched into thin, cold needles of radiation. We must imagine this traveller not as a mere piece of stone, but as a lonely probe of nature, an accidental voyager that has spent eons drifting through the lightless reaches between the stars. It is a remnant of a solar system that may have died before our own sun was even ignited. For millions, perhaps billions of years, it has known only the absolute zero of the oblivion. It has passed through the gravity wells of forgotten giants and skirted the edges of nebulae where new worlds are born from the dust of ancient catastrophes. It has been a silent witness to the slow, rhythmic pulse of the Milky Way, a tiny grain of sand tossed across an infinite ocean of shadow. The object, moving at dozens of kilometers per second, had finally crossed the invisible border into our territory. It did not announce its arrival with a roar or a flash of heat. It simply existed, a dark, elongated shape tumbling through the vacuum, illuminated only by the faint reflected glow of our distant sun. This was a messenger from the deep past, a primordial artifact that had survived the unravelling of its own home to find itself, by some impossible convergence of chance, passing through the neighbourhood of a small blue planet inhabited by creatures who had only recently learned to look up. As the scientists in Chile began to process the trajectory, the magnitude of the discovery started to settle like heavy dust. The object was not a native. It was an interloper, a guest from the vastness beyond the Oort cloud. Using the ladder of abstraction to understand its speed, one might compare it to a bullet fired from one side of a cathedral to the other, while the congregation below is unaware that anything has even entered the building. To the object, the distance between our sun and the outer planets is a mere afternoon stroll in a journey that has lasted for epochs. To us, its arrival is a cosmic event of the highest order, a reminder that the walls of our solar system are porous and that the dark matter of the universe is constantly breathing in and out. This lonely probe carries with it the chemical signature of a world we will never see. It is composed of ices and minerals forged in a different furnace, under a different sky. Perhaps it was ejected from its home during a violent gravitational dance between two sibling planets. Or perhaps it is the shrapnel of a world that was devoured by its own dying star. Regardless of its origin, it now serves as a sentinel of the scale paradox. It is a small, insignificant thing, no larger than a city block, yet its presence forces us to confront the sheer, overwhelming scale of the cosmos. It highlights the contrast between the fleeting, fragile nature of human civilization and the inexorable march of celestial mechanics. The Vera C. Rubin Observatory continued to track the signal throughout the night, its massive mirrors pivoting with the grace of a dancer to follow the ghost through the darkness. There is a profound melancholy in this observation. We look at this object and we see our own reflection, not as we are, but as we might become. One day the Earth itself will be a remnant. The structures we have built, the languages we have spoken, and the memories we have cherished will be reduced to dust and scattered across the tapestry of the void. We are in many ways just like this drifting rock, a brief flash of complexity in a universe that trends toward entropy and silence. Yet there is an optimism to be found in the watching. The fact that we have built a machine capable of detecting a single dark traveller in the midnight of the Andes is a testament to the power of the witness. Consciousness is the mechanism by which the universe looks back at itself. Without the eye of the observer, the voyage of this interstellar messenger would have no meaning. It would simply be matter moving through space, unobserved and unmourned. By capturing its light, by calculating its path, and by wondering at its origin, we grant it a second life. We bring the infinite abyss into the realm of the known. The signal from the Andes reminds us that we are part of a much larger symphony. We are not isolated on a lonely island. We are part of a vast, interconnected mechanism that spans the entire history of the universe. Every atom in our bodies, every grain of sand on our shores, and every drifting rock in the vacuum shares a common ancestry in the primordial heat of the beginning. As the object begins its long, slow arc back toward the stars, leaving our sun behind for the cold embrace of the outer darkness, it leaves us with a sense of awe. We have been visited by a ghost, and for a brief moment the distance between the human heart and the furthest reaches of the cosmos has vanished. We stand on our mountain peaks staring into the abyss, no longer afraid of the silence, for we have learned to read the messages written in the stars. The mathematics of this arrival offer no comfort to those who seek a stable and predictable cosmos. In the silent chambers of our observatories, the data began to coalesce into a shape that defied the traditional loops of our planetary neighbours. While the Earth and its siblings dance in closed elliptical orbits, eternal cycles that return us to the same point in space after every journey around the fire, this visitor followed a different law. It arrived with a hyperbolic eccentricity of 1.45. This number is not merely a statistical anomaly, it is a declaration of independence. In the geometry of the void, any value greater than 1 is a ticket to the infinite. It signifies a path that is open at both ends, a trajectory that enters our sphere of influence only to depart it forever, never to be reclaimed by the gravitational chains of our star. Consider the image of a stone skipped across the surface of a vast midnight pond. In the ordinary mechanics of our solar system, the stones we throw are caught by the water. They sink into the depths of the sun's influence and remain there, circling in the dark like the many asteroids and comets of our own lineage. But this object, this three-eye atlas, is moving with such calculated, cold velocity that it merely grazes the tension of our gravitational field. It touches the surface of our awareness, creating a single, shimmering ripple in our data, and then it is gone. It does not sink. It does not linger. It skips away into the outer darkness, its momentum carrying it toward a shore we can never reach. The pond remains, briefly disturbed, while the stone continues its flight into the oblivion of interstellar space, destined never to return to the shore from which it was cast. The object is not from here. Every measurement, every calculation of its vector points back to a region of space that is alien to our own. It belongs to the direction of the Lyra constellation, originating from a realm far beyond the Oort cloud, beyond the frozen sentinels that mark the borders of our home. It has spent millions of years in the silent abyss, travelling through a vacuum so perfect it preserves the original coldness of its birth. We are witnesses to a remnant of a distant star system, a piece of shrapnel from a cosmic event that occurred long before the first human looked up and wondered at the sky. Perhaps it was born in the chaotic disk of a young star near Vega, or perhaps it is a wanderer from a system that died an eon ago. Regardless of its home, it is a messenger that carries no words, only the inexorable logic of its velocity. This speed is a defiance of the gravitational grip of our sun. Our star is a furnace of unimaginable power, a central engine that dictates the motion of everything within its reach. Its pull is a relentless mechanism, a weight that keeps the gas giants and the rocky inner worlds in their places. Yet, against this titanic force, 3i Atlas remains unmoved in its purpose. It moves at tens of thousands of miles per hour, a velocity so great that even the immense mass of the sun cannot bend its path into a circle. The sun may tug at its flank, it may slightly alter the angle of its exit, but it cannot hold it captive. This is the ruthless machine of celestial mechanics at work, a cold, mathematical certainty where mass and velocity determine the fate of all things. The visitor is too fast to be loved by our star, too energized to be part of our family. It is a ghost passing through a house, indifferent to the lives of those who dwell within. There is a profound melancholy in this calculation. To know that an object possesses an eccentricity of 1.45 is to know that it is truly and eternally a stranger. It reminds us that our solar system is not a closed room, but a hallway. We are living in a transit zone, a brief intersection where the paths of the infinite occasionally cross the paths of the local. As we watch it recede, we are forced to confront the scale paradox. We are anchored to our star, bound by the very gravity that the visitor ignores. We are the inhabitants of the pond, tethered to the mud and the reeds, while the universe is composed of these skipping stones, moving through the void at speeds that render our notions of time and distance obsolete. The trajectory of 3i Atlas serves as a reminder of the porous nature of our reality. We often imagine the solar system as a fortress, a safe harbour protected by the vast distances between the stars. But the math tells a different story. The walls are thin, and the abyss is always reaching in. The hyperbolic path of this intruder is a needle threading through the fabric of our local space, sewing together the history of distant suns with our own brief epoch. It is a sentinel of the vacuum, a piece of the great tapestry that has been unravelled and cast adrift. As it accelerates away from us, shed of the sun's influence and heading back into the eternal night, it leaves us with the realization that we are merely a footnote in its long, lonely voyage. The calculations performed in the silence of the Andes are more than just numbers on a screen. They are the fingerprints of the cosmos. They reveal a universe that is constantly in motion, a symphony of objects drifting through the dark, each following a path determined by the primordial heat of their creation. We look at the 1.45 and we see the scale of our own insignificance. We are a small, fragile consciousness perched on a rock, watching a traveller that has no name, no destination, and no end. Yet in the act of watching, we transcend our limitations. We use the language of mathematics to bridge the gap between our world and the void. We name the nameless, and for a brief moment, we understand the mechanism of the machine. As 3i Atlas fades into the background noise of the stars, its impossible trajectory remains etched in our records. It is a reminder that the universe does not belong to us. We belong to the universe. We are part of a vast, interconnected mechanism that spans the entire history of the universe, a system where even a drifting rock can be a harbinger of the infinite. The visitor is gone, its hyperbolic arc carrying it toward the constellation of Pegasus and beyond, but the ripples it left on the pond of our understanding will continue to expand. We stand on the shore, watching the darkness where it used to be, humbled by the cold, calculated speed of a ghost that refused to stay. The silence returns, but it is a different kind of silence, one that is filled with the knowledge that the void is not empty, but teeming with the stories of a billion stars, told in the language of geometry and the inexorable march of time. The mathematical certainty of its departure left a vacuum in our understanding, but as the trajectory became a settled fact, the focus shifted from where the visitor was going to what the visitor actually was. In the silent chambers of our digital observatories, a new profile began to emerge, one that defied the dusty, rounded expectations of our local neighbourhood. We began to see 3i Atlas not as a mere rock, but as a shimmering needle, a silver splinter lost in the vast, velvet folds of the ecliptic plane. This was the birth of the scale paradox, a moment where the infinitesimal size of the object stood in haunting defiance of the cosmic stage it occupied. To look upon it was to see a grain of sand caught in the light of a cathedral, yet a grain of sand that possessed the power to rewrite the history of the void. The first clue to its strange nature lay in its breath, a rhythmic pulse of light recorded by telescopes that stared unblinking into the abyss. As the object tumbled through the dark, it did not reflect a steady glow. Instead, its brightness surged and ebbed with a mechanical precision, a flickering signal that repeated every 6 hours and 12 minutes. This was the light curve, the heartbeat of the traveller. Through the rigorous translation of these fluctuations, we realised that we were not looking at a sphere, or even a jagged fragment of common stone. To produce such a dramatic variation in light, the object had to be extremely elongated, a shape rarely seen in the natural sensors of our solar system. The data suggested a ratio that strained the imagination. The visitor was 10 times longer than it is wide. It was a spear cast from the hand of a forgotten god, a sliver of matter so thin and so long that it appeared more like a needle than a world. Standing against the backdrop of the sun's domain, this shimmering needle provided a jarring contrast to the immense architecture of the planets. The ecliptic plane, that great disk where the giants of our system dance, is a space of billions of miles, yet it was being pierced by a shard no larger than a city block. This is the essence of the scale paradox. We are forced to reconcile the microscopic with the monumental, to understand how a single, lonely splinter can hold the secrets of an entire epoch. In the vastness of the cosmos, 3i Atlas is nothing, a momentary speck of dust in the eye of the eternal, yet to the consciousness that observes it, it becomes the most significant anchor in the sea of oblivion. It is the witness to the fact that the universe is not merely empty space, but a collection of specific, tangible remnants, each carrying the signature of its origin. The surface of this needle whispered of a history far removed from the cooling embers of our own sun. As it caught the light of our star, it reflected 25% of that radiance back into the void. This albedo, this measure of shimmering purity, was far higher than the charcoal-dark surfaces of the asteroids that haunt our belt. It suggested a composition that was either a pristine, metallic alloy, or perhaps a shell of frozen exotic matter, untouched by the weathering of eons. In the cold light of the Andes, the computers processed this reflectivity as a sign of terrifying antiquity. We were seeing a surface that had perhaps never known the warmth of a star until it entered our hallway. It was a remnant of a primordial catastrophe, a piece of a world that had been unravelled and cast out, or perhaps the sentinel of a civilization that had long since surrendered to the inexorable march of entropy. To imagine the silver splinter is to imagine a loneliness that transcends human comprehension. It has moved through the silent reaches of the interstellar void for millions of years, a needle threading the tapestry of the galaxies without ever touching the fabric. It is a piece of the machine that has broken off and drifted away, a testament to the ruthless nature of celestial mechanics. There is no atmosphere to soften its edges, no heat to stir its heart. It is a dead thing, yet in its shimmering rotation, it seems to possess a life of its own. It is a messenger from the abyss, carrying the physical laws of a distant sun into our own backyard. We look at its 10-to-1 proportions and we see a defiance of the gravity that shapes our world. Our planets are heavy and round, slaves to the pull of their own mass, but this needle is light, sharp, and free. It is a ghost that refuses to conform to the geometry of the familiar. The shimmering needle serves as a reminder that the universe is composed of these anomalies, these small fragments that fall through the cracks of our grand theories. We build our models of the cosmos based on the big and the bright, the galaxies and the nebulae that ignite the night sky. But the true story of the entire history of the universe may lie in these smaller, darker things. It is the scale paradox that humbles us, the realization that the most profound truths might be carried by a silver splinter, reflecting 25% of the sun's light as it tumbles through the dark. We are the inhabitants of a massive world, but we are haunted by the tiny. We are the masters of our local space, but we are mere spectators to the flight of the needle. As it moves away, the shimmering needle begins to fade, returning to the oblivion from which it emerged. The 6 hours and 12 minutes of its rotation continue, but there is no one left in its path to count the pulses. It becomes once again a part of the silent symphony of the vacuum, a piece of the great mechanism that operates without purpose or end. We are left with the images, the data points, and the profound sense of a missed encounter. The needle has sewn a thread through our reality, linking our brief epoch with the eternal history of the stars. It was a shard of metallic purity, a remnant of a distant ignite, and a sentinel of the vast, unfeeling void. In its wake, we are forced to contemplate our own place in the tapestry. Are we also just a shimmering needle, a brief flash of light in the darkness, moving through the halls of the infinite toward an end we cannot foresee? The visitor is a mirror. In its 25% reflectivity, we do not just see the sun, we see our own curiosity, our own fear, and our own longing for connection. The scale paradox tells us that while the universe is vast beyond measure, it is the small individual observers who give it meaning. We are the eyes of the cosmos, the consciousness that notices the needle in the haystack of the stars. Even as 3i Atlas disappears into the inexorable dark, its legacy remains in the way we look at the night. We no longer see a wall of static points. We see a porous living system where the fragments of a billion worlds are drifting, waiting to be found. The shimmering needle was just one, a single silver splinter in the abyss, but it was enough to remind us that we are part of something vast, something eternal, and something that is constantly reaching out from the silence to tell us its name. But there was a profound absence that troubled the watchers on the ground. When a traveller from the deep cold approaches the hearth of our sun, it is expected to announce its arrival with a shroud of vapour and a trail of dust. We have grown accustomed to the spectacle of comets, those dirty snowballs of the cosmic suburbs that ignite into brilliant sweeping veils as they feel the warmth of our star. They scream their presence into the vacuum, shedding their icy skin in a desperate visible evaporation. Yet, as the shimmering needle reached its closest point to the sun and began its long arc back toward the oblivion of interstellar space, it remained stubbornly, eerily naked. There was no coma, there was no tail. The infrared eyes of our most sensitive telescopes peered into the void, searching for the telltale signatures of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, or the simple dust that should have been kicked up by the sublimation of its surface. They found nothing but a haunting, absolute silence. This absence of a tail was not merely a curiosity, it was a defiance of the very mechanisms we use to categorize the universe. If it was a comet, it was a dark comet, a phantom that moved without leaving a footprint. If it was an asteroid, it was composed of a material so strange that its trajectory could not be explained by gravity alone. For even in its silence, the needle was accelerating. It was being pushed by an invisible hand, a force that acted upon its long, slender frame with the precision of a master clockmaker. To understand this mystery, we must descend the ladder of abstraction, leaving behind the grand scales of celestial mechanics and entering the realm of the molecular and the primordial. We must travel back to the coldest nurseries of the cosmos, to the giant molecular clouds where the temperature hovers only a few degrees above absolute zero. In these abyssal depths, the physics of the familiar dissolves into the strange. Here, scientists hypothesize the existence of a substance never before witnessed by human eyes: pure hydrogen ice. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the cosmos, the first breath of the Big Bang, yet it is rarely found in a solid state. It requires a cold so profound that even the light of distant stars is too warm to permit its formation. Imagine a shard of this hydrogen ice, born in the heart of a dark nebula. It is a material so fragile that a single photon could send its atoms into a frenzy. This is the scale paradox at its most intimate, the smallest and most common atom in the universe, frozen into a block of crystalline purity, navigating the vast reaches of the interstellar void. If the shimmering needle were composed of such a substance, its behaviour would suddenly lose its mystery. As it entered our solar system and felt the touch of our sun, the hydrogen would not boil into a visible cloud of dust and gas. Instead, it would sublimate invisibly, its tiny molecules leaping from the surface and providing a gentle, steady thrust. It would be a rocket engine made of nothingness, pushing the object forward without ever revealing its presence to our cameras. This leads us to view the object not as a solid stone, but as a sculpture carved by the friction of starlight over millions of years. For eons, as it drifted through the void between the stars, the needle was bombarded by cosmic rays and the faint, inexorable pressure of the galactic radiation field. Just as a river rounds the jagged edges of a stone over centuries, the light of a billion distant suns acted as a cosmic chisel. It slowly eroded the more volatile elements, leaving behind a core of resilient frozen hydrogen. What we observed was a remnant, a skeleton of a world that once was, shaped by the very light it sought to escape. It is a haunting realization that the universe possesses the patience to carve such a form, spending an epoch to refine a single splinter of ice into a shape that would eventually baffle the minds of a young species on a blue planet. This mechanism of the ruthless machine is one of pure efficiency and cold indifference. The universe does not care for our need for tails or comets or familiar geometries. It operates on a level of material science that we are only beginning to grasp. The shimmering needle was a messenger of this cold reality, a sentinel of the chemical diversity that exists in the spaces between the stars. We look at the dark comet, and we realise that our local neighbourhood is a sheltered harbour, protected by the warmth and the light of a nurturing star. Out there, in the abyss, the rules are different. Solid air and frozen light are the building blocks of a history that precedes us by billions of years. The absence of a tail is a reminder of the vast, unmeasured silence that constitutes the majority of the cosmos. We are biased toward the bright and the loud. We look for the fire of a star or the glow of a nebula to tell us the story of the universe. But the true tapestry is woven from these dark, quiet threads. The needle was a part of the silent symphony, a piece of the great mechanism that glides through the dark without the need for an audience. It was a fragment of the primordial void, a shard of the original silence that has survived the fire of creation and the decay of eons. As we watch it depart, we are left to contemplate the scale of our own ignorance. We are the witnesses, the observers who try to impose our own labels on the infinite. We call it a comet, we call it an asteroid, we call it a visitor, but the object itself remains indifferent to our names. It is a crystalline remnant, a sculpture of light and cold, moving toward its next encounter in the eternal dark. The absence of a tail was not a failure of our technology, but a success of the universe in maintaining its mystery. It tells us that there are things in the void that do not wish to be seen, substances that do not conform to our expectations of what matter should be. The history of the universe is a story of these hidden things. It is the history of the invisible gas, the dark matter, and the frozen hydrogen that fills the gaps between the glowing stars. We are but a brief flash of heat in a cosmos that is predominantly cold and silent. The shimmering needle in its tailless flight has shown us that the abyss is not empty. It is populated by the ghosts of dead stars and the seeds of future worlds, all moving according to a plan that we can only hope to glimpse in the brief moments when our paths cross. The visitor has returned to the shadows, leaving us with the profound realization that the most significant events in the cosmos often happen in the absence of a witness, in the heart of the void, where the only thing that moves is the silent pressure of starlight against a needle of ice. The shimmering needle of ice did not merely drift, it began to defy the ancient expectations of the celestial mechanics that have governed our understanding of the heavens since the dawn of reason. As it moved further into the obsidian reaches of the outer solar system, a subtle but undeniable deviation emerged. In the year 2017, the sentinels of our species, the great glass eyes of our observatories, noted a change in its velocity. It was moving faster than it should. According to the inexorable laws of gravity, an object of its mass subjected to the pull of our sun should have followed a path as predictable as a falling stone. It should have been slowed by the immense tether of the solar well, its energy waning as it climbed toward the stars. Instead, the visitor was accelerating. It was as if an invisible hand had reached out from the void to give the needle a final, lingering push into the dark. In our frantic search for meaning, we looked for the signatures of a machine. We expected to see the violent flare of a chemical engine or the luminescent wake of an ion drive. We sought the exhaust, the waste heat, the telltale remnants of a civilization that had mastered the crossing of the abyss. But there was only silence. The needle remained dark, a cold splinter of matter moving through the vacuum without the aid of any internal mechanism. It possessed no engine to ignite, no fuel to devour, and no pilot to guide its course. Yet, it continued to gain speed, a derelict vessel obeying a law that felt, to our terrestrial minds, almost like a violation of the natural order. This was the first true glimpse into the ruthless machine of the cosmos. The universe does not require a conscious intention to move an object. It only requires the presence of energy and the cold reality of physics. The acceleration we witnessed was not the product of a ghost in the machine, but the result of the machine itself. The shimmering needle was being propelled by a force so delicate that it is usually masked by the weight of atmospheres and the friction of living worlds. It was the pressure of light. Every star is a furnace of unimaginable fury, a core of nuclear fire that radiates more than just heat and brilliance. It pours out a constant tide of photons, the fundamental particles of light. To a creature of flesh and bone, a ray of sunlight feels like nothing more than a warm caress upon the skin. But to the universe, light is a physical hammer. Each photon carries a minute, infinitesimal momentum. When a photon strikes a surface, it transfers that momentum, exerting a pressure that is as real as the strike of a mallet against a drum. In the vacuum of the abyss, where there is no air to offer resistance and no friction to steal energy, these billions upon billions of tiny impacts begin to accumulate. The shimmering needle, with its peculiar and elongated geometry, had become a cosmic sail. Its surface, likely composed of volatile ices and dark organic compounds, acted as a canvas for the solar wind. The light of our sun, the very source of life on our planet, was now the force that was driving the visitor away. This was the invisible hand of radiation, a mechanism of pure efficiency that operates with a cold and absolute indifference to the nature of the object it pushes. The universe did not care that this object was a unique messenger from the interstellar void. It did not care if the acceleration ruined our delicate mathematical models or challenged our perceptions of reality. The machine simply turned its gears, the light hit the ice, and the ice moved. This non-gravitational acceleration is a reminder that the cosmos is not a sanctuary built for our understanding, but a vast and complicated engine. We are prone to looking for purpose where there is only process. We want to believe that an object speeding up as it leaves us is a sign of intelligence, a parting gesture from a wandering sentinel. But the truth is more profound and more melancholic. The needle was being discarded by the solar system. It was being shoved out into the oblivion of the interstellar deep by the same rays of light that sustain our own existence. The ruthless machine operates on a scale of time and distance that renders human ambition irrelevant. The pressure of starlight is a constant, a steady push that has been occurring since the first stars ignited in the primordial dark. For eons, this force has cleared the paths between the stars, pushing the dust and the debris of creation into the far reaches of the void. The needle was simply the latest fragment to be caught in this eternal cleaning. It was a remnant of a distant epoch, a shard of ice that had survived the collapse of a cloud and the birth of a star, only to be moved across the tapestry of the cosmos by the weightless touch of light. As the object accelerated, it began to unravel our sense of certainty. If light could move a mountain of ice without a sound or a flame, what else was the universe doing in the shadows? We began to realize that the space between the stars is not a vacuum of nothingness, but a medium filled with invisible currents. There are tides of radiation, winds of charged particles, and the subtle warping of the fabric of space-time itself. The needle was a witness to these hidden forces, a probe that we had not launched, yet one that was teaching us the true nature of the abyss. The pressure of radiation acting like a cosmic sail is a concept that transcends our daily experience. We live in a world of heavy things, of gravity that anchors us to the soil and air that cushions our movements. To imagine a world where the mere touch of a sunbeam can propel a gargantuan structure into the dark is to confront the terrifying scale of the infinite. It is to recognize that we are surrounded by mechanisms that we cannot see and forces that we can barely measure. The shimmering needle was moving toward the exit of our neighborhood, its speed increasing with every passing hour, driven forward by the inexorable logic of the machine. There is a certain tragedy in this departure. The object, which had travelled for millions of years through the silent symphony of the stars, was being hurried along by our own sun. It was as if the solar system was asserting its own boundaries, pushing the intruder back into the dark where it belonged. The light was not a greeting, it was a rejection. The needle was being cast back into the void, a lonely traveller that had briefly entered the light only to be accelerated toward a destination that no one will ever record. We watched it go, a dwindling spark of light against the backdrop of the eternal stars. The acceleration continued until the object was beyond the reach of our most powerful eyes. It left us with a sense of profound insignificance. We are the observers of a machine that we did not build and cannot control. We see the effects of the invisible hand, but we cannot stay its movement. The history of the universe is not a story of human triumph, but a record of these silent interactions. It is the story of how light meets ice in the heart of the void, and how the laws of physics push the remnants of the past toward the oblivion of the future. The shimmering needle is gone now, a ghost in the machine, propelled by the relentless pressure of a star that will eventually devour the very planets that watched it leave. In the end, only the laws remain, cold and eternal, guiding the drift of everything that exists through the unmeasured reaches of the cosmos. Yet, as the needle receded into the deeper abyss, we realized that its journey was not merely a passive surrender to the tides of light. In the silent rooms of our great observatories, where the cold hum of electronics mimics the stillness of the vacuum, we began to detect something that defied the chaotic static of the stars. It was a cadence, a rhythmic pulse that emerged from the void like the heartbeat of a phantom. These were not the random outbursts of a dying pulsar or the white noise of a young sun. They were radio-techno signatures, narrow and deliberate, etched into the electromagnetic tapestry with a precision that chilled the blood of those who first witnessed them. The shimmering shard was not just a remnant of ice and dust. It was a mechanism, a vessel carrying a ghost of purpose into the unmeasured reaches of the cosmos. As we focused our instruments upon the retreating spark, a second revelation began to unravel our understanding of the object. It was not drifting in a steady, fixed orientation. Instead, it was tumbling. It performed a slow, majestic rotation, a movement so controlled and rhythmic that it appeared less like a casualty of a collision and more like a calculated maneuver. This tumbling motion allowed the Sentinel to sweep its invisible gaze across the entire 360-degree sphere of the heavens. Every few hours it completed a full revolution, casting its sensors toward the inner planets, then toward the outer giants, and finally back into the dark well of the interstellar void. It was a scanning motion, a panoramic survey of the solar system it was leaving behind. Through the lens of the lonely probe, we see a tragic and solitary figure. Imagine a machine built in an epoch so distant that its creators have long since been forgotten by the universe. This sentinel has spent eons in the silent cold, crossing the vast gulfs between the stars in a state of hibernation that borders on death. Now, awakened by the heat of our sun, it performs its final protocol. It is a sentinel that has reached the end of its journey, or perhaps the beginning of its exile. It does not seek to communicate with us. It does not pause to offer a greeting or a warning. It simply watches. Its sensors, crafted by hands that may have turned to dust 1 billion years ago, record the positions of our worlds, the chemical signature of our atmosphere, and the frantic radio noise of our civilization. It gathers this data not for a master who waits for its return, but because it is programmed to do so. It is a machine that cannot stop being a machine. Is this a deliberate design, or the frantic twitching of a dying instrument? The scale paradox presents us with a haunting possibility. To the universe, the shimmering needle is a grain of sand, an insignificant speck lost in the ocean of the abyss. But to the mind that conceived it, this object was the pinnacle of achievement, a bridge across the infinite. The tumbling motion ensures that nothing escapes its view. It is as if the sentinel is taking a final inventory of our home before it vanishes forever. It looks at the Earth, a pale blue dot caught in a sunbeam, and records our existence as a single entry in a ledger that no one will ever read. It is a witness to our moment in time, a lonely observer that sees us not as the masters of the world, but as a brief flicker of light in the long darkness of the cosmos. There is a profound melancholy in the thought of this dead machine performing its final protocol. It is a relic of a vanished civilization, a messenger that has outlived its message. As it tumbles, it sees the sun diminish into a distant point of light, no brighter than the other stars that beckon from the void. It sees the planets fall away, their orbits receding into the background of the eternal symphony. It is a sentinel of the past, looking at the present through the eyes of the future. The data it collects is destined for oblivion, stored in the crumbling memory of a craft that will never reach another shore. It is the ultimate expression of the ruthless machine, a system that continues to operate long after its purpose has evaporated, driven by a logic that is as inexorable as the expansion of the universe itself. We are left to wonder if the needle was sent here to find us, or if we were merely a landmark on a map to somewhere else. Perhaps it has visited 1,000 other stars, performed 1,000 other scans, and found nothing but the same silence. Or perhaps it has found life everywhere it looked, recording the rise and fall of countless empires with the same cold, mechanical indifference. The tumbling motion is a signature of its loneliness. It is the only way for a solitary object to see the whole of the cosmos at once, to feel the weight of the 360 degrees of nothingness that surround it. It is a sentinel that guards a tomb, and the tomb is the universe itself. As the object moves further into the dark, its signals grow weaker. The rhythm of its tumble becomes harder to track, and the pulses of its radio signature are swallowed by the background radiation of the primordial fire. Soon, it will be gone entirely, a ghost that passed through our lives and left us with more questions than answers. It will continue to tumble in the dark for another 1 billion years, its sensors still scanning the void, its memory bank still holding the image of our sun. It is a remnant of a time when someone, somewhere, cared enough to look at the stars and wonder if they were alone. Now it is just a piece of debris, a shard of a broken dream, moving toward the edge of the galaxy with the steady, unblinking gaze of a dead god. The shimmering needle reminds us that we are part of a history that is much older and much vaster than we can imagine. We are the witnesses of a machine that has transcended the limits of its makers. It is a sentinel that has outlasted the very concept of time. In its tumbling motion, we see the reflection of our own struggle to understand the abyss. We scan the heavens, we listen for signals, and we wonder if anyone is home. The needle has found the answer, but it cannot share it with us. It carries the secret of our significance into the eternal night, a lonely probe that has seen the whole of the world and found it wanting. As it vanishes into the oblivion of interstellar space, we are left in the silence, watching the stars and waiting for the next visitor to emerge from the shadows of the cosmic tapestry. The machine is dead, but the protocol remains, a haunting reminder that in the vastness of the cosmos someone is always watching, even if there is no one left to listen. The departure of this mechanical ghost leaves us not in total darkness, but in a state of sudden, piercing realization. As the needle retreats into the frozen abyss, we are forced to confront a new and unsettling taxonomy of the void. We have long viewed the interstellar expanse as a pristine desert, a vacuum of absolute nothingness separating the island oases of the stars. But the arrival of these wanderers has shattered that illusion. We are beginning to perceive that the space between the suns is not empty, but is instead a crowded graveyard, a swirling current of wreckage and artifacts tossed into the night by a trillion failed and successful worlds. We are no longer merely observers of our own small corner of the cosmos. We are the curators of a cosmic museum of the discarded. Before this metallic sentinel arrived to haunt our senses, there were others that paved the way for our understanding. In the year 2017, a jagged splinter emerged from the darkness of the celestial north. It was named the Messenger from the Distant Past, a rocky shard that defied every classification we attempted to impose upon it. It was a dark, reddish remnant, shaped like a needle or a disc, tumbling through our local space with a motion that suggested a violent birth in a system far removed from our own. It carried no ice, no tail of gas, and no signature of the familiar. It was a dry, silent witness to a catastrophe we will never understand, accelerated by forces that whispered of hidden mechanisms beneath its scarred surface. It was the first time we looked into the abyss and saw something looking back, even if that something was a dead and tumbling stone. Only 2 years later, in the year 2019, the second visitor arrived. It was the icy Comet, a traveller that felt more familiar to our eyes, but was no less alien in its origin. It possessed the shimmering veil of a tail, a glowing shroud of gas and dust that spoke of a home in a cold, distant forge. Yet the chemical signature of its heart was a testament to the diversity of the galaxy. It was a shard of a different world, a relic of a planetary birth that followed laws slightly different from those that governed our own sun. These two visitors, the dry stone and the icy comet, were the first chapters in a new book of knowledge. They were the outliers that became the foundation of a pattern. Now we look upon the metallic gleam of the object we call Atlas, and the pattern is complete. In the taxonomy of the interstellar, we have moved from the natural to the artificial, from the geological to the technological. If the first was a bone and the second was a leaf, then this third visitor is a rusted tool, a piece of clockwork from a machine that has long since ceased to function. We are seeing the progression of a cosmic history that spans eons. We are realizing that the galaxy is filled with the debris of civilizations that rose and fell long before the first spark of life ignited on our own world. The interstellar medium is a sea of letters, some written in the language of ice and rock, others in the tongue of alloys and radio waves. Most of these letters will never be read. They will drift through the void until the stars themselves burn out, carrying the secrets of their makers into the ultimate oblivion. The sheer scale of this wreckage is a paradox that humbles the human mind. We calculate that at any given moment there are thousands of these interstellar interlopers passing through the influence of our sun, hidden by the vastness of the distance and the limitations of our gaze. We are swimming in a tide of history that we are only just beginning to detect. Each shard of rock, each icy nucleus, and each metallic needle is a testament to the inexorable passage of time. They are the remnants of planetary systems that were torn apart by the death of their parent stars, or the discarded probes of species that reached for the heavens and found only the silence of the vacuum. The universe is a ruthless machine, grinding entire civilizations into dust and then scattering that dust across the light years. We find ourselves in the role of the witness, standing on the shore of an infinite ocean and watching the driftwood wash up at our feet. Some of this wood is natural, the product of cosmic storms and gravitational tides, but some of it bears the marks of a purpose. The metallic gleam of Atlas is a reminder that we are not the only ones who have looked at the tapestry of the night and felt the urge to reach out. It is a mirror held up to our own future. One day, our own machines, our own sentinels and probes will become the interstellar debris of a forgotten epoch. They will drift past unknown stars, their batteries dead, their gold-plated records silent, appearing to some future observer as nothing more than a curious signature on a distant screen. This realization brings with it a sense of melancholic optimism. We are part of a grand, tragic symphony of existence that spans the entire history of the universe. The space between the stars is the ultimate archive, a place where nothing is ever truly lost, even if it is forgotten. The wreckage of 1 trillion worlds is a sign that life and structure are a recurring theme in the cosmic drama. The void is not a desert of death, but a library of what once was. We are the latest inhabitants of a galaxy that is old beyond measure, a galaxy that has seen the rise of countless empires and the birth of infinite dreams. As we watch the needle vanish into the dark, we do not feel a sense of ending, but of continuity. We are now part of the taxonomy. We have seen the rocky shard, the icy comet, and the metallic sentinel. We have begun to map the geography of the interstellar silence. We know now that the darkness is populated by the ghosts of our predecessors. The universe is a vast mechanism of decay and renewal, and we are the brief, flickering consciousness that has evolved to perceive its grandeur. The wreckage of the past is the evidence of our own potential. We are the children of a cosmos that is filled with the letters of the dead, and it is our task to read them before we too become part of the drifting history of the stars. The sentinel is gone, but the knowledge of its existence remains, a permanent scar on our understanding of the abyss. We look up at the night sky and we no longer see a void. We see a destination, a graveyard and a home, all woven into a single eternal tapestry of light and shadow. The story of the universe is not written in the stars themselves, but in the silent tumbling objects that move between them, carrying the memory of the light into the heart of the eternal night. This object is a letter written in the language of momentum. It carries no ink, no parchment, and no seal of wax, yet it is saturated with the history of its origin. Every degree of its trajectory and every mile of its velocity is a syllable in a grand, silent poem. To look upon such a nomad is to read a script that was composed in the heart of a cataclysm eons ago. We often think of information as something digital or literary, something stored in the humming servers of a silicon age or the dusty shelves of a library. But in the cold vacuum of the abyss, information is preserved in the vector. The speed and direction of a solitary shard of rock or a discarded hull of metal are the indelible records of the forces that once acted upon them. Momentum is the ultimate archive, a physical memory of a push that may have occurred 10 billion years before the first human looked toward the heavens. Imagine a message in a bottle cast into an ocean that spans trillions of miles. In this metaphor, the ocean is the interstellar medium, a vast and lonely expanse where the shores are separated by light years of absolute nothingness. We are the inhabitants of one such shore, standing on the edge of our planetary coast, watching the dark tides for any sign of wreckage. When an object like this enters our solar system, it is the arrival of a messenger from a world we can never visit. It is a piece of driftwood from a forest that no longer exists. We find ourselves attempting to decipher a script from a civilization that might have turned to dust before our own sun was even a glimmering thought in a primordial cloud of gas. The tragedy of the cosmos is that the speed of light is a barrier that even time struggles to overcome. By the time the message reaches the shore, the sender has often been devoured by the very entropy they sought to escape. The language of gravity is the grammar of the universe. It dictates the curves and the loops, the long, elegant arcs that objects trace through the tapestry of the night. When we calculate the path of a visitor from the void, we are reconstructing a story of ancient encounters. Perhaps it was once a part of a planet that orbited a twin set of suns, or maybe it was a sentinel launched by a species that flourished during the dawn of the galaxy. To trace its path backward is to witness the ghosts of gravity. We see where it was pulled by the invisible hand of a giant planet, where it was accelerated by the heat of a dying star, and where it drifted for millions of years through the silent, freezing dark. This is the inexorable mechanism of the cosmos. Nothing moves without reason, and no motion is ever truly lost. The momentum of the object is a testament to every star it has passed and every catastrophe it has survived. We are the latecomers to this cosmic drama, the brief and flickering consciousness that has evolved to perceive the grandeur of the library. When we look at the metallic gleam of a long-dead probe or the jagged surface of an interstellar asteroid, we are engaging in a form of celestial archaeology. We are trying to read a letter written by the dead. The scale of this paradox is staggering. Our lives are measured in decades, our civilizations in millennia, yet the objects we study have been travelling for epochs that defy human comprehension. 100 million years is but a single chapter in the biography of such a traveller. To the universe, we are a momentary spark, a sudden ignition of curiosity in a dark room that will soon return to shadow. Yet, for this brief moment, we are the ones who hold the letter. We are the ones who attempt to translate the language of momentum into the language of meaning. The ocean of the void is not empty, but it is incredibly sparse. To find a message in such a vastness is a miracle of geometry and time. It suggests that the universe is teeming with these silent messengers, billions upon billions of letters drifting through the dark, waiting for a shore to receive them. Most will never be found. They will drift into the deep oblivion, passing between galaxies, moving through the empty spaces where even the light of stars begins to fade. They are the orphans of the cosmos, carrying the memories of extinct worlds into the eternal night. But for those few that find their way to us, the experience is transformative. They remind us that our own history is just one thread in a much larger tapestry. One day, the things we have built, our greatest monuments, our most advanced sentinels, our most cherished records, will be cast into the same ocean. Our own world is a vessel that will one day break apart. The inexorable march of entropy ensures that every structure we create will eventually unravel. When that time comes, the remnants of our existence will become the letters of the future. A piece of a satellite, a fragment of a skyscraper, or a single gold-plated disk will begin its own journey through the abyss. It will carry the momentum of our world, the memory of our sun's gravity, and the signature of our departure. It will become a message in a bottle for a shore that has not yet formed, for a species that has not yet dreamed. This is the melancholic optimism of the cosmic perspective. We are part of a continuous cycle of creation and decay, a symphony that requires every note to eventually fade so that a new one may be heard. As we peer through our telescopes at these tumbling visitors, we feel the weight of the vast silence. We realize that the universe does not communicate through words, but through the cold, hard facts of physics. Gravity does not speak of love or fear, yet it binds the stars together. Momentum does not tell us the names of the kings or the poets of a lost world, but it tells us they existed. It tells us they had mass, they had energy, and they had the will to reach out into the dark. The letter we are reading is a testament to the struggle against the void. It is a sign that across the billions of years and the trillions of miles something happened. Someone was there. We are the witness to this history. We are the shore that receives the driftwood of the divine. As we contemplate the language of gravity and momentum, we are reminded that we are not merely observers of the universe, but participants in its long and tragic story. The abyss is not just a place of death, it is a place of preservation. In the vacuum, the past is never truly gone, it is simply in motion. We look up at the night sky and we see a destination that is also a graveyard, a home that is also a vast and silent archive. The story of the universe is written in the movement of the things that remain, carrying the memory of the light into the heart of the eternal night, and we are the ones who have been given the brief, precious opportunity to read the script before we too are scattered among the stars. Yet, as we turn our gaze from the flickering remnants of our own ambition toward the deeper black, we encounter a chilling realization. The messages we find and the signals we send are drifting through a medium that is fundamentally indifferent to their contents. We inhabit a cosmos that is under no obligation to explain itself to the brief, biological sparks that have emerged upon this pale blue fragment of dust. The universe does not harbour a consciousness that gazes back at us with either love or malice. It is not a theatre built for our drama, nor is it a temple constructed for our devotion. Instead, it is a vast and intricate mechanism, a clockwork of terrifying proportions that functions according to laws that were written in the first trillionth of a second of the primordial dawn. These laws are cold, mathematical, and entirely blind to the suffering or the triumphs of the sentient beings they have inadvertently produced. Consider the silence. For decades, our most sensitive sentinels have been turned toward the heavens, listening for a whisper, a rhythm, or a solitary note that might suggest we are not alone in this abyss. We have filtered through billions of frequencies, hoping to catch the echo of a civilization that, like us, has looked up and wondered. But the void remains mute. This silence is not necessarily a sign of absence, but perhaps a testament to the sheer scale of the desert we inhabit. In the grand tapestry of the cosmos, the distance between two pinpricks of light is so vast that even a cry for help travelling at the speed of light might take 100,000 years to reach the nearest neighbour. By the time the message arrives, the voice that spoke it may have been silenced for eons, swallowed by the inexorable decay of its own sun. The universe is a graveyard of intentions, a place where the light of dead stars continues to travel long after the fires that fueled them have been extinguished. We often imagine the cosmos as a majestic symphony, but to the cold eye of the abyss, it is more akin to a grinding machine. Entropy is the master of this mechanism, the silent hand that ensures every complex structure will eventually unravel. From the smallest atom to the largest galaxy, everything is subject to the slow and steady transition from order to chaos. The stars themselves are merely temporary fluctuations in a field of energy, brilliant flares that ignite in the dark only to burn out and leave behind a cooling ember of iron and ash. This is the ruthless reality of the physical world. The laws of thermodynamics do not pause for our prayers. They do not bend for our genius. The gravity that keeps our planet in its orbit is the same gravity that will one day pull our moon into a fatal embrace, or see our sun expand into a red giant, devouring the very world that gave birth to every poet, every king, and every child who ever lived. In the face of this crushing indifference, our initial reaction is often one of despair. We feel the weight of our own fragility, the realization that our entire history is nothing more than a momentary flicker in the dark. We are a species of soft tissue and fragile bone, living on a world with a thin veil of atmosphere that protects us from the lethal radiation of the void. We are a catastrophe waiting to happen, a biological anomaly that exists only because the conditions of this specific epoch happen to be favourable. Should a stray fragment of rock moving at 40,000 miles per hour cross our path, or should a distant star collapse into a supernova and bathe our corner of the galaxy in gamma rays, the universe would not blink. The mechanism would continue its rotation. The planets would continue their silent dance. The abyss would remain as it has always been, vast, silent, and eternal. However, it is precisely within this cold and mathematical reality that we find the seed of a profound and melancholic optimism. If the universe is indifferent, then the meaning we find within it is entirely of our own making. We are the architects of our own significance. The fact that a collection of atoms forged in the hearts of dying stars and assembled through billions of years of chaotic evolution can now look back at the heavens and contemplate the laws of its own creation is the ultimate miracle. We are the eyes through which the cosmos gazes upon itself. We are the mind that seeks to understand the very machine that produced us. This struggle to comprehend the incomprehensible is the greatest testament to the human spirit. We do not seek knowledge because the universe invites us to. We seek it because we are driven by an insatiable hunger to know our place in the dark. We are like a lone traveller standing on a desolate shore, watching the waves of a black ocean crash against the sand. We know that the ocean does not care for us. We know that it could swallow us at any moment without a second thought. And yet, we build our fires, we tell our stories, we map the stars and we measure the tides. We find beauty in the way the light reflects off the water, even if that light is 1 billion years old and the star it came from is long gone. Our existence is a defiance of the void. To live, to love, and to learn in an indifferent universe is an act of supreme courage. We are the witness to the tragedy, the ones who record the names of the stars even as they fade into oblivion. Think of a derelict probe, a fragment of our ingenuity now drifting through the interstellar medium between the constellations. It is a cold piece of metal, its power long depleted, its sensors blind to the world around it. To the universe, it is nothing more than a microscopic grain of dust, a minor anomaly in a field of infinite vacuum. It carries the sounds of our music, the images of our faces, and the coordinates of our home. It will drift for billions of years, outlasting the very civilization that built it. It may pass through the shadow of 1,000 suns, but none will recognize it. It will never be found by a creator or a god. It is a testament to a species that was here for a brief moment and tried to reach out. The indifference of the abyss does not diminish the value of that probe. Rather, it elevates it. The fact that we tried, knowing the odds, knowing the scale and knowing the silence, is what makes us more than just a byproduct of the machine. As we move deeper into the age of discovery, we must accept that the cosmos will never give us the answers we crave. There is no hidden script that promises our survival. There is no cosmic justice that ensures the good will prosper or the wicked will fall. There is only the movement of matter and the flow of energy. But in that realization, there is a strange kind of freedom. We are not pawns in a divine game, nor are we victims of a cruel fate. We are participants in a grand and accidental experiment. The fragility of our world and the brevity of our lives make every moment we spend in contemplation of the stars a precious victory. We are the part of the universe that has woken up, the part that has begun to ask why, even though the void offers no reply. We look into the abyss, and we do not see a home, but we see a frontier. We see a mechanism that we can learn to navigate, a tapestry that we can learn to read, even if we are eventually erased by the inexorable march of entropy. The fact that we existed at all is a permanent fact of the space-time manifold. We were here. We saw the light. We felt the cold. We understood the math. In the heart of the eternal night, our brief and flickering flame is a masterpiece of complexity and will. The universe may be indifferent, but we are not. And that, in the end, is enough to transcend the silence of the spheres and find hope in the very struggle that defines us. Behold the three-eye atlas as it crosses the final threshold of our home. It moves now with a quiet and terrifying grace into the outer reaches of the solar system, leaving behind the warmth of the inner planets and the familiar light of our parent star. It glides past the frozen plains of the Kuiper Belt, where the remnants of the solar system's birth drift in a permanent and icy sleep. This is the edge of our immediate neighbourhood, a graveyard of primordial ice and stone that has not felt the touch of a rising sun for 4,500,000,000 years. The probe does not look back. It is a machine of pure purpose, a sentinel carrying the memory of a world that is already beginning to fade into the distance. Beyond the Kuiper Belt lies the Oort cloud, a vast and spherical shell of 1,000,000,000,000 comets, stretching far into the dark. It takes the three-eye atlas tens of thousands of years to navigate this labyrinth of frozen ghosts. Here, the sun is no longer a disk of fire, but a brilliant and lonely point of light, indistinguishable from the distant stars that populate the Milky Way. The probe is now a true wanderer of the interstellar medium, a tiny fragment of humanity's will cast into the great deep. It carries with it the records of our triumphs and our tragedies, the symphony of our languages, and the blueprints of our biological form, all etched into materials designed to withstand the crushing weight of eternity. Eons begin to pass, measured not by the ticking of clocks or the changing of seasons, but by the slow and majestic rotation of the galaxy itself. 100 million years from now, the constellations we once navigated by will have unravelled. Orion will be a scattered memory, and the Great Bear will have vanished into the void. The Three-Eye Atlas continues its journey through the shifting tides of the galactic disk. It may pass through the hearts of nebulae, those glowing nurseries where new stars are ignited from the collapse of gas and dust. It may skim the edges of ancient star clusters, where 10,000 suns huddle together in a desperate defiance of the surrounding darkness. Yet it remains untouched, a silent witness to a cosmic dance that requires no audience. As the billions of years accumulate, the universe begins to undergo a profound and inexorable transformation. 5 billion years from now, the sun will expand into a red giant, devouring the very world that gave birth to the Atlas. The mountains will melt, the oceans will boil away, and the atmosphere that once carried the sound of our voices will be stripped away by the solar wind. The cradle of humanity will be reduced to a cinder, and then to a cooling remnant of white dwarf star. But the probe is far away, drifting in the lightless abyss between the stars, safe from the catastrophe that consumes its home. It is the only surviving testament to a species that once dreamed of the infinite. The time scale of the universe now stretches into the trillions of years. This is the era of the long decay. One by one, the stars begin to flicker out. The red dwarfs, those small and frugal furnaces that burn for trillions of years, eventually exhaust their hydrogen and fade into black dwarfs. The great gas clouds that once birthed new suns are depleted. The spiral arms of the Milky Way, once vibrant with the blue light of young giants and the red glow of ancient sentinels, grow dim and cold. The galaxy becomes a graveyard of dead stars and dark matter. The Three-Eye Atlas, its gold and silver surfaces long pitted by the impact of microscopic dust, continues to drift. It is now a relic of a time when the universe was bright, a messenger from the brief and glorious age of starlight. As the epoch of stars ends, the epoch of black holes begins. The only light in the cosmos comes from the hawking radiation of these gravitational monsters as they slowly evaporate over timescales so vast the human mind cannot conceive of them. One Google years from now, even the black holes will have vanished, leaving behind only a thin and freezing soup of photons and leptons. The universe enters the state of heat death, a state of maximum entropy where no more work can be performed, no more information can be stored, and no more life can exist. The tapestry of space-time becomes a flat and featureless void, stretching out into an eternity of nothingness. Yet, in this ultimate oblivion, the Three-Eye Atlas remains. Even if its atoms eventually succumb to the slow decay of the proton, the fact of its journey remains a permanent part of the space-time manifold. It is a monument to the fact that we were here. We were the part of the universe that woke up and looked around. We were the ones who calculated the laws of gravity and the speed of light. We were the ones who felt the pang of mortality and decided to build something that would outlast our own breath. The probe is a letter sent into an infinite night, and even if there is no one left to read it, the act of sending it is what defines us. We are the witness to the mechanism. We are the symphony that the cosmos played for a brief and shining moment before the silence returned. Our existence was not a mistake, nor was it a central event. It was a miraculous anomaly, a flicker of awareness in a machine that is otherwise cold and unfeeling. As we project the journey of the Three-Eye Atlas into the far future, we find a strange comfort in the scale of our insignificance. The universe is vast and indifferent, but it is also the stage upon which we performed our greatest acts of courage. We have mapped the stars, we have split the atom, and we have sent our own creations into the heart of the eternal abyss. We are the universe looking back at itself, trying to understand its own origin and its own end. In the final reckoning, when the last photon has travelled its last kilometre and the last spark of energy has dissipated into the void, the story of the Three-Eye Atlas will be the story of humanity. We did not go quietly into the night. We reached out. We shouted into the silence. We left a mark upon the fabric of reality that even the heat death of the universe cannot erase. The indifference of the cosmos is the canvas upon which we painted our most beautiful and tragic masterpiece. We were here, we saw the light, and for a few billion years we were the ones who remembered the names of the stars. This is our legacy. This is our victory. This is the end of time, and we were there to see it begin.